welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds. Oh, you know what? That would help.
Are we not live?
We are live now.
We are live now.
We are live now. Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nergus Steve, and today I'm joined by Todd Kenreck. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. I made the mistake of setting up a new studio setup for some shoots I'm doing, and that was a terrible idea to do in the middle of the night because, you know, nothing could possibly go wrong.
Nothing could possibly go wrong. That sounds famous last words.
Yeah.
So what's going on, man? You've got some big changes in the works. It appears you're back on YouTube. As you,
I'm back on my old YouTube channel, which was Dungeon Life, if you remember. But I just changed the URL to just Todd Kenreck. I'm gonna come out with more interviews and more content on that channel. I already had my interview with Joe Manganiello. I got another piece of that interview that's coming out Wednesday as well, and then I got interviews with Luke Gygax and a lot more people to come. So yeah, I'm excited to get back into it.
Well, I mean, you've always been good at getting people to interview on. And I remember when you were Dungeon Life, which I really like that name. But now you're going to be stuck with Todd Kenreck, you know, because I think you only get one switch if you switched back.
I think you switch like 3 times a year now. Yeah. Like they keep on changing it.
Yeah. The rules always change. They keep moving the goalpost. But I remember before when we had you on, you had just started and like everyone was talking about you in the YouTube sphere. They're like, who is this guy? He works for Wizards of the Coast. And I was like, no, he's just a dude. And he like, you know, he just knows how to get a hold of people and does these really great interviews. And you know, so then you started doing that for D&D Beyond and now you're back doing it for yourself.
Yeah, I got that question a lot. Like people are like, how are you getting these people to talk to you? And I had been the video game editor in chief at NBC News for, I don't know, like 4 years. And I've been a video game reporter before that. And I worked at Forbes and I've worked for BuzzFeed. And so like that, at least I was known in the game industry at that point. But really what it came down to is no one was, not a lot of people were trying to interview Wizards of the Coast or the people in the D&D community at the time. And I think that's a big part of why that happened. I love doing it because I'm obsessed with D&D.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone I know who plays D&D is pretty obsessed with it as well. And like very emotionally invested. And that's a very, it makes my job super easy because they're like, I like seeing people happy and passionate. And then that looks great on camera too. You can just read people's faces that they care.
The community is like really open, so that does make it like a lot easier. To get a hold of people. Of all the people, Wizards have been a little bit more difficult to get on, but we've had them on a couple times. And also, I feel like their PR wall has gotten thicker over the years.
I think they're working tremendously hard, and anytime not writing a book is time not writing a book. Right?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Dave Rosser had dropped some questions in the chat before you even got on here. Can you talk about your involvement with Kobold's latest Magic Item Kickstarter?
Yeah, they reached out to myself and my wife, Megan Kenreck, and whether we would like to make a magical item. And I'm like, yeah, of course. That'd be awesome. Of course, they did this in like one of the busiest weeks of my life. But, you know, not as busy as like launching a Kickstarter. So we made a magical item that is loosely associated with my wife's character Sophia's from Silver and Steel. That is going to be that's part of the Kickstarter, and that was really fun. And everyone there is lovely and very kind, and they were great to work with. So it was fun to make a magical item with my wife.
Yeah. Cool. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Dave also had a question about, didn't your channel have older videos? If so, will we get to watch them again?
Oh yeah, so my old channel did have older videos. I did actually sell those to D&D Beyond, so those are probably not going to crop up again. But I am planning on getting interviews with all those people again, so it will be fresh content.
Did D&D Beyond put those videos up, or are they sitting somewhere collecting dust?
I think that they put them up. I'm pretty sure most of them are up. Yeah.
So in theory, people can still watch them, and then they can come back and see the new videos as well.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
it's on the internet. It exists forever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Most of the time, like it's weird the number of my video game reviews are missing from NBC and which ones are still up, and I don't know the logic of that.
Oh yeah. But even then, there's a chance that it exists somewhere else, just because the internet's totally weird like that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody just reached out to someone on our crew about another creator's stuff being uploaded on another YouTube channel, which happens fairly often.
Yeah, like I didn't mind that at NBC because they're NBC.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But like when you do that to another YouTuber, that's very disingenuous, and that's kind of rough on them, unless they're like a really big entity and they can like take the damage, of income.
Yeah, I mean, it's been tamped down a lot. Like a lot of the changes that YouTube has made that people didn't like kind of help. Yeah. Like you have to have 1,000 subscribers, you have to have a certain amount of watch hours. Like now they can rip our content, but they're not going to benefit from it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
So it does kind of help. So what's in the pipeline now? I thought I saw a tweet maybe last week, or I think it was last week, about Idle Champions.
Yeah, so I was offered a position at Codename Entertainment for specifically Idle Champions to be their creative manager, and so right now I'm just dipping my feet into the pool of watching all their shows constantly, and doing media stuff and doing interviews for them as well for upcoming shows. Like there's a really great show with B. Dave Walters that's coming out called Idle Champions Presents that I'm very excited about. B. Dave's a great dungeon master. There's a really great cast behind that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And they are some of the loveliest people you could ever know. Very Canadian. Just exceptionally nice people. Very talented.
Awesome. I mean, and you're super talented, so it didn't take long for someone to try and snatch you up. So
that's very kind.
That is awesome. So I know you're a big fan and proponent for streaming. Do you have any plans?
Yeah, so I do have a lot. We do have a lot of plans besides the interviews. My wife and I are probably going to do a show where she just asks me D&D questions, which is kind of perfect. She's been playing D&D for a long time now, actually, and she was on a show for 39 episodes called Silver and Steel, and I had run games for her before, like shows that no one watched, like as Guardians of the Multiverse and stuff like that. But she's gonna kind of be like a pseudo host, and then asking me like D&D advice and questions, and then I'll do some just kind of look right at the camera videos as well. But we're going to stream also like actual a live play show with her and I have a one-on-one game called Whittle and Rend, and it's cute because it's cute, but it's not cute. Whittle is this gnome that she plays that is so dangerous and kind of murderous, an artificer with I know you say artificer on your channel.
We get a hard time we're getting a hard time for that as well.
Artillerist, and I play this big lump of magical items that became sentient called Rend, and who's like 8 feet tall, and it's this fun one-on-one that we've done together, and we're gonna stream it, and we really don't care if anyone likes it. Like, because that's a hard gig to stream a one-on-one game. But I think it'll be a really fun show, and I'm really excited to do more content and create more content with my wife in the D&D world. So I think it's gonna be fun.
A lump of magic items, is that what I heard?
Yeah, my idea for Rend has always been how he was introduced. He was a helm of telepathy, but like the idea has always been that these magical items in D&D get left on these dungeon room floors for a long time, and I feel like eventually they have kind of a radiation where they're not good anymore, when batteries start leaking and get corrosive. So he was this lump of magical items that was just sitting there from maybe several different characters who had passed in a dungeon, and slowly that radioactivity just kind of made something that was sentient, and that's Rend. So he's just these odd assortment of magical items or pieces of creatures in the D&D universe that were constructs, like a
Yeah.
scarecrow or animated armor. So he's got a very kind of horrifying visage. Yeah.
That does sound a bit on the terrifying side.
Yeah.
So when the campaign kicks off, when you guys start streaming, are they already together, or does Ren get at it later?
We may have to do a bit of a prequel, like an unscripted prequel, because I don't like ever having a plan. I like improv, but we may revisit that for the audience for sure, because it's always, I mean, first off, it's D&D. You can always the same game is never going to be the same twice. That's the point of modules, right? Like, back in the 80s, like no one had the same story as to what happened. So I think it'll be fun for us to do the first episode where they meet for the first time.
That would be. What is the backstory?
What, the backstory for them?
Yeah.
The backstory is it's a very weird world where like everyone's constantly in motion on the planet that we kind of start on. Whittle is very laser focused and not aware of a lot of things. Whittle has done terrible things. Like Whittle was attacked by a werewolf once. But the reason, and Whittle did not immediately understand this, was that Whittle the gnome had actually cooked a werewolf and eaten it. And then
who does that?
I know. Yes. Well, she thought it was a wolf. So she just dumped it right in the pot and started cooking it. And this other werewolf attacked her, and she offered the werewolf in the pot to the werewolf attacking her. And
it only gets worse.
They turned out to be mates, and it was like it was a bad scene. And she didn't know that, but that was the narrative I had written. And so she kept on, she didn't realize she was like just taunting this other creature more and more. And that's the fun of Whittle, is Whittle gets into these terrifying situations. And Rend takes everything too literally. One of my favorite moments is Whittle told Rend, they're in this big goblin moving city, and Whittle said, you can't, if anyone hears you, you have to kill them. So we have to be really, really careful. And Rend is very polite. And so everywhere they walked, they made their stealth checks, but Rend would see a goblin and be like, hello, I have to kill you now. So it's really dark humor. So be prepared for that. Yeah.
That sounds problematic.
Yeah.
On so many levels.
It's a sidekick that isn't that helpful.
Yeah.
and
it makes things interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So are you playing that character kind of as a DM PC, or is it an NPC?
As a DM PC, a DM PC for sure. Yeah. Like I can't be a DM and a player at the same time. So I've played Rend, live before.
Okay.
He is very simple. He's a departure from Avron for sure. It's a lot more relaxing to play Rend. Though I believe he has a much higher murder account, but he's a nice guy.
Will you be DMing any other streams?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do some stuff for Jasper's Game Day. I am probably gonna be doing something for GaryCon as well, I believe, and I may be dungeon mastering another show soon. But right now, I'm just kind of focusing on like my channel and like Whittle and Rend and doing interviews. Like it's only been a week. I already feel like I'm kind of coming out guns blazing, but I want to make sure that we're doing things right. And certainly, as you know, you kind of have to just do the thing and figure it out on the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, you'll never get it done. So,
what is your planned release schedule?
Well, I'm gonna probably start moving to releasing content Tuesdays and Thursdays. I may start live streaming every day on Twitch. I'm still taking a look at that, like 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
But that content may not make itself may not show up on YouTube, but Whittle and Rend will be like a weekly series. I would expect that in the month, and that will be like in like series of chunks. So maybe 10 to 20 episode arcs, and then we take a break, possibly.
Makes sense. How long are those episodes going to be?
I think those are. It really depends because we typically play for 2 hours. So they'll be around 2 hours, but I could see a case for like shorter one shots when it's just two people performing. It's amazing. I don't know if you do allow one-on-one shots, but you talk a lot more.
Yeah.
You also get a lot more done, by the way. Like not everything's a debate, and you'll be surprised what can be accomplished in D&D when there's one person.
But yeah, when there's no committee to run things by, for sure.
Right. I mean, like the lethality of it becomes extremely.
No, we got a frozen Todd. Oh, there you go.
I froze, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw the signs. I saw the warning signs. The lethality of doing a one-on-one D&D adventure is a bit higher, but I love doing it. It's really funny. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it is, but like I think like whether it's one-on-one or 2 players or 3 players, it's just like you're just going to tell different stories, right? I think people always make this mistake of trying to play D&D with less players like you would play with the normal group, right? They want to tell the same stories and it doesn't work as well. But
yeah, like I ran like a Star Wars campaign. We had like our Christmas episode where we had like 12 people at the table, and that went fine. Weirdly enough, I had assistant dungeon masters though. Oh God, did I freeze again? No, you're moving. Okay.
No, you're good.
My preference is really like 4 players.
Yeah.
And 1 dungeon master. That's pretty perfect for me. But I've been in games of like 8 people, 10 people. Yeah.
Same. I think our table like has maxed out at like 13, 14 players, and as low as 3. But I've definitely played a bunch of sessions with 2 players. And I like it. It's fun. It's like, you're not going to go just crawling around the dungeon, but like the annex they get up to tends to be a lot more amusing and like more personal to them as well. So like,
it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more scary for the player in some ways. You really have to know as a player like when to like cut it and get out. Like you've gone too far. I would say it almost gets a little bit more cinematic in that sense. Like combat moves very quickly. And you do figure out the outcome of that combat relatively soon, where even with 4 players, combat's going to take up like most of your game. If at least half, if not the entire game sometimes, depending on the encounter. So yeah,
like I feel like with like just like 1 player or 2 players, you just have so much more tension when it comes to like scenes where they're like just sneaking around, and things like that.
Every roll really matters, right? Like no one's going to like I mean, stealth is certainly pretty scary because that's live or die. And it's often for a party that can be live or die sometimes, but like persuasion checks, all kinds of stuff everything becomes a lot more laser focused. Like, okay, we have to not, and things are going to go wrong. Like there's way more chances of that. And there's no cleric, right? There's no one dishing out the heals. The Rend originally was a forged domain cleric because I felt like that made sense for an inanimate set of objects, but yeah.
So now that you're back to kind of doing your own thing, will you branch out beyond D&D more?
Beyond D&D, absolutely. I could see myself doing that. I used to play Vampire the Masquerade. That's such a dark game, and it just makes me go darker. I play super dark characters that almost not make fun of that universe, but like it can be so oppressive playing vampire because that's the buy-in, right? You're vampires. You're immortal beings that feed off other humans.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a happy story.
So maybe a Jason Carl interview in the future?
Yeah. Oh, I would totally interview Jason Carl for sure.
Yeah, he's great to talk to.
And then that also means like, talking to people that like Mage Hand Press, Made Dark Matter, Kobold Press, talking to these other creators more. Um, an amazing indie, fifth.
No, we have a little more freezing. Well, folks,
Everything
hopefully,
okay?
yeah, you're back
I
now.
think everyone in my household is on a video stream of some kind because
That
because
will do it.
yeah, so definitely, like, I want to, like, get some more creators who are in the third party space for fifth edition, right?
Yeah,
The
so I
indie scene.
imagine in some ways not being attached to D&D Beyond anymore, kind of frees you up to do more stuff.
I mean, well, not not having, being completely free of your own on your own means you can do anything you want.
Yeah, for
So
better or worse.
yeah, for better or the worse, like, you will live and die by that sword.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's always more opportunity in being independent. Well, not always, certainly, like, if you
yeah.
have like a big company behind you, I guess that can help. But, like, yeah, I think it's gonna be really great. I'm already having a lot of fun. um there Everyone in the community has been very, very kind and supportive, and so yeah, I'm excited where it goes. um
Is there anybody in particular kind of chomping at the bit to talk to now?
for me to talk to, or to talk to me?
Either. Either.
uh
Like
I don't
someone you might want to interview, but like maybe they have nothing to do with D&D, so it didn't fit before.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I might look at some, like, people in the video game industry that I know were avid D&D players, and, like, talking to them again, or about tabletop in general, that I think are more associated with it than people not necessarily know.
Yeah.
So I can see that there's no, like, Moby Dick white whale person I'm trying to grab, because they really don't think that way. Like, I just like interviewing people, but, like, I'm sure other people from Wizards of the Coast, Jerry Holkins and people again will be cropping up. But, like, yeah, it'd be great to interview Xavier Woods and everything again. And yeah, but, like, yeah, it's a good point, because I haven't thought about, like, I know, like, James Gunn like, plays D&D, and I met him Lollipop Chainsaw. That was a long time ago, that video game, but that's when I first met him.
Lollipop Chainsaw.
Yeah, I believe it was called Lollipop Chainsaw. It's a very, very fun video game. I think the Left Rights did some of the soundtrack, or at least the lead singer. And it was just a preposterous video game that he created. And this was right after Slither, I believe. But yeah, I was always a big James Gunn fan. So I think interviewing him again about tabletop would be pretty fun.
Yeah, I know for me, like it was like super exciting when we had Monty Cook on for the first time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then like he was handed off to us by Sean K. Reynolds. And I'm like, and like we played a lot of third edition back in the day. So for me, like that was like super exciting. Um, and then also we've had David Harbour on, and we were able to talk to him.
Oh, yeah, David Harbour on. That's fantastic.
I know it was so random.
He seems like a super nice guy. Yeah.
He was like, we just like, so we did this fantasy cruise back in like 2015. It was like a Comic-Con at sea, and the
Yeah.
Stranger Things cast was on it.
Oh, weird.
And like we had given away a cabin, and one of our guests had actually asked the kids if they played D&D, and they're like, no. And when David Harbour was like, well, I play every week, you guys can play. And and so I just like tweeted at him, and he responded, and he gave me like a 20-minute ripcord, but he stayed for 40, so I felt really good about the chat. So
no, that's always a good sign. Yeah, like that. It is weird. Like, some people, if sometimes people just like to talk about stuff. I got to I got to talk to Ernie Hudson from, he was in Ghostbusters and The Crow, and I was weirdly a big fan of his.
Yeah.
And what was supposed to be like a 10-minute interview turned into like a 40-minute interview. And then the weirdest bit was oh my god, I'm kind of flaking right now, my brain, because it's a little bit early in the morning.
Need more
Uh,
caffeine.
yeah, I just went off caffeine again, which
Oh
don't
no.
do that. Never, never did that. But like I interviewed the voice for Ghostbusters, and that was really cool at
Yeah.
NBC. And other like interviews that were kind of, I can't think of like anything like right now that really stood out. There are times I did celebrity interviews that I did not
Yeah.
publish actually, and that was I definitely got like had to make some fights where like this interview was just terrible.
Oh yeah.
That happened, and so if I don't like an interview, I will definitely for sure toss
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like when they're like, "Oh, we can do 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever," I feel like I just call that the ripcord, right? That's like if they're not into it, they're like they want an excuse to get out, And if they stay beyond the ripcord, that means they're digging.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like there's nothing worse than an interview that someone doesn't want to be in. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to be in it either. It's like being in an awkward conversation. Harold Ramis was one of the best ones ever. I interviewed him because Ghostbusters the video game came out, and we talked for maybe an hour or two.
Yeah.
Because initially it was about the video game, and then we just started talking about like Stripes. There's my wife. We just all of his movies, and he was just a lovely, lovely human being. Yeah.
So, are you a big video game player?
Yeah, I certainly had a lull after NBC because I was playing all my own video games. I was doing them all to completion. I was playing them all on normal or difficult, which was not a good idea. So I was working 14 hours a day to get all those games done.
Yeah.
So I am playing the new Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I am enjoying that. I'm actually playing Dungeons 3, which is very, very, very much the spiritual successor to Dungeon Keeper. I think that's very cathartic for dungeon masters. I do enjoy that game. The humor is pretty funny. And I'm probably going to play some Hitman. I'm playing Spider-Man, and I'm playing a lot of open world games to kind of cope with,
The lack of open real world.
Yeah, so like swinging around on a web around New York is like pretty therapeutic, or like
Yeah.
destroying is it Norman villages or Saxon villages of that time period? I can't remember. In Britain as a Viking is therapeutic in a weird way. So
I don't video game, not in quite some time. I don't have enough room in my life for another hobby.
It is hard. I think about D&D endlessly. Like if I'm not hanging out with my wife, I'm just thinking about D&D. Like I'm either creating a new character, or I'm working on a subclass, or I'm writing a story, or I'm mainly just thinking and daydreaming and trying to find, like, I really like finding exploits, and I hate playing them though, which is weird, right? Like I don't like breaking D&D. But the exploits are fun for me to like find and discover random things.
I totally get that, because like we do a lot of that on our channel, but like we don't really play that way. We don't play that way. And even if there's things in the game that we kind of rag on, like we do play those things. Like we like playing those things, and that's probably why we rag on them, because we like them.
Yeah. I mean,
so you see the warts.
Yeah, especially if you love something, right? Like I do play a lot of Warlocks, but I know Warlocks are not as powerful as Wizards, and I got weird hangups of like I like to play a character that can either clone or cast Resurrection, and I love the spell Clone. I very much think Clone should be an infusion at some point for the Artificer.
Well, I mean, you just need a buddy, right? You don't actually have to be able to cast it.
You need a buddy, and yeah, this is it's not a solo play game. Yeah, so I'm that way. Like kind of like the trickery domain, right? I'm weird about it, but it's so effective. Is if you're playing an elf that's trickery domain, you do invoke duplicity. You now have elven accuracy. You have like not triple advantage, but you're rolling 3d20s if you do the invoke duplicity and you're within 5 feet of your target. And now you do inflict wounds. Now inflict wounds actually matters because you're probably hitting. and you may be critting, and now you're kind
So
of doing some assassin level damage.
this weekend we have we've got a Grave Domain Cleric
I love those.
that also has levels and fighter, I believe. And yeah, they were invisible, used Eyes of the Grave. Is it Eyes of the Grave or Path of the Grave? Whatever the ability is that gives vulnerability.
Yeah.
Action surged and then attacked with advantage and crit it.
Ugh.
180 points of damage
Ugh.
from an inflict wound spell.
And that's not smite like that.
No. It just like whatever it was, the monster just got ripped to pieces.
Yeah, it is a devastating level of damage. It is pretty terrible. So
The best part is it had 4 hit points left.
I mean, I did the math. Like I like going to any dice and looking at the mathematics of like what your average damage output is going to be. So and looking at the CR rating of monsters and stuff like that. And I don't do this on my own channel, though maybe I should. But like looking at the CR rating of those monsters, and then your probability of like just one-shotting them is pretty high if you get advantage on inflict wounds, especially triple advantage with elven accuracy. Then you're not wasting a spell slot. It's nasty stuff.
Yeah, you just need, and then you just need that Grave Domain buddy to help you out.
Yeah, if you get that going, clerics are just beasts in 5th edition. Like they're just tough. Yeah, they're just so overwhelmingly powerful. Actually, I don't have a problem with it. I don't. I like a good war cleric. Like Tempest Cleric is really fun.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to play the Healbot Cleric anymore for sure.
No, and it took me a long time to get my brain around that. Like, because I started playing Avon as a Trickery Domain Cleric because I just play whatever class people need him to be because I jump for Malav groups. But I was playing in one of Joe's games, Joe Manganello's, and they needed a cleric because they're of course all tanks. So I played a Trickery Domain version myself, and they were horrified because they're bruisers and they're fighting, they're super metal and they're killing things, but they had never encountered how evil Averin is. And like I got 2 factions to fight themselves underneath Waterdeep. I caused like an all-out bloodbath war, and I did terrible things as the Trickery Domain Cleric.
Sometimes you can do far more damage just by using your words.
Just use your words. That's why I'm really tempted by the Bard College of Eloquence. That is a nasty subclass.
Yeah, I've got one written. I've got a player in one of my games that's playing one of those, so it's like, any kind of like charisma check, it's like they can't get under like a 20.
No. Yeah, and then if you look at the DMG for the guidance on social interactions, it's pretty it's very specific what you can get away with.
Yeah.
Is it fun though? Like, is it a little tiresome that this person wants to talk to everybody every time?
Nah, I don't mind. I mean,
okay, I was
like, I let players do whatever they want, right? And also like checks aren't mind control. So it has, it has its limits. I mean, we've gotten a lot of great memes, about that, but the reality is, you're not gonna seduce the queen sitting next to the king, right there in the
there
courtroom,
has to be you have to be rational about that. I think that's good. Yeah.
So I want to jump in the chat and grab some questions. Dave wants to know if you ever plan on doing cosplay interviews again.
Oh wow. Yeah, probably. It depends. I kind of want to stay in this kind of, tabletop arena. I enjoyed this amazing interview I did with someone who did a Kenku, and that was such a wonderful find at Emerald City Comic-Con. Thing about cosplay interviews is, there are no conventions right now. But I have some friends who do great costumes, Justin Fletcher and Babs and people who are, a lot of people in the D&D community do. That's a good person I should interview is Micah Byrne. Micah Byrne is a wonderful human being. So
fortunately, there's a huge crossover right now between cosplay and D&D, so it's not as hard. Doug wants to know what sorts of content we look forward to on Codename Entertainment.
I'm really looking forward to B. Dave's new show. that's going to be appearing this week. I think it's going to be chaos. The people can vote on the actual show, and I love that kind of stuff. I love chaos as a dungeon master, and B Dave knows I am chaos, so he's very used to having to deal with that. I'm not going to be on the show. Thank God for him. Uh, but it's a really good cast. It's gonna be, I think it's gonna be really fun, and it's all tied into the game itself, so that's really exciting. I don't, there's only so much I'm allowed to say at this point,
Okay.
but I think it's gonna be a great time. B Dave's a really good DM. He's a very instinctual, and he really does follow that rule of cool. He ran a one-on-one shot for my wife and I, where she was Whittle and I was Averin, and it ended up kind of becoming a pseudo origin story for how he became a god, because it was an actual 3rd edition module about Vecna and going to Vecna's this dark palace that he had in the the negative material plane, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm really excited for that. I adore Garwar. He's this guy who knows everything. He knows so much about Idle Champions, and he's so well presented, and he does so well on these Twitch streams explaining Idle Champions to me. I mean, and everyone else. It's really fantastic. But I also love the whimsy that Idle Champions has. Like, we have a show about pancakes. Like, someone makes pancakes every day. I mean, every week, and it reminds
The important thing is, do you get to eat the pancakes?
I heard they're not so tasty.
Oh no.
Yeah, I heard something about that dye makes them not as enjoyable. They're certainly edible, but not.
Yeah, I feel lied to in a certain way.
Yeah, right. Well, it's kind of like, cakes, right? You think some parts of the cake are going to be tasty, but no.
No, it's for sure.
It doesn't turn out that way. So, and I'll be doing some interviews I'm doing interviews right now for Idle Champions and stuff like that, and talking about like what I will be doing live on that channel. But mainly it's just everyone's already so creative and nice and extremely smart. It's a lot of good people to be amongst, and I'm excited that Lauren Urban is now on the team as well. And
oh, cool.
Yeah,
scooping up all the D&D Beyond people.
Lauren Urban is a good friend and just a wonderful human being. So
yeah, I've had the opportunity to have her on and chat, and it was a great time talking to her. So Wally wants to know, how many characters have you created but have never gotten a chance to play? Do you put a lot of effort into their backstories or personalities?
I do. I kind of start sometimes I'll start mechanically because I just want to know how they'll function. I do have some characters that I've got Dragonborn I've always wanted to play, that my friend Richard Witters actually did artwork for.
Yeah.
And he's just a Dragonborn Path to the Beast, because I love that. The most dragony dragon you could be, right, is this this giant, like, it almost looks more like a Traskborn. The drawing that Richard did was so amazing, but I just love this kind of almost like Venom hulking mass of a Dragonborn, who can literally eat people and get sustenance. Like, that's the scariest Dragonborn. I have this very creepy story for kind of an aberrant mind soul sorcerer that I love. It's a short story I actually wrote before I started interviewing the D&D folks, and I don't know how I'm gonna play that character, but that character's got to be like Adam's Family weird, right? Like
Adam's Family weird, huh?
Yeah, because I don't want to go too dark, but this is also someone whose mind has to move in strange directions, right? Like, it's a character that I love, characters that kind of come out of nowhere, right? I don't know why. I just enjoy them. Or I play characters I hate. Like, I kind of hate Averin in some way, right? Like, it's a hard character to play, and people don't know that, like, these are kind of villain type characters, and playing them for a long time, like, you do have to be having the best time. And that's kind of the point with Averin, is you have to really, he has to be enjoying the evil he does, but often parties are not like on board with like all the destroying world chaos. So you have to pick your party with that kind of thing. But when you watch Loki gets dumped on a lot. Like, no wonder Loki has low self-esteem, because that the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe is just people telling Loki how terrible he is, even when he's doing something good.
Well, he spent a lot of time earning that reputation,
He
though.
didn't earn it. He didn't earn it. But it's also hard to play as a player,
Yeah,
because that's the buy-in, is that like everyone's gonna, judge you for the terrible things you've done.
yeah. After reading Neil Gaiman's Norse mythologies, right?
Yeah.
I've come to a conclusion. All the problems stem from two places.
Right.
Dudes wanting to sleep with Freya, or Loki did it. Like, that's it. Nothing else causes problems for the Norse.
It's a lot of people messing with Freya, and it's Loki.
Yeah.
It's it's all Freya related. Stealing Thor's hammer.
Yeah.
Only a manipulation to try to get married to Freya. I forget the giant's name.
Well, whatever it takes to get Thor in a dress, because that's just funny.
Right. Norse mythology is amazing. It's just there is no other mythology quite like it in its sense of humor. I question some of the later translations for Ragnarok, because they're so grimdark.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, if that's true that everything got this dark, because it gets very biblical dark, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some dark moments in there, but also like that mythology is like one of the more human ones.
Very human. I mean, even more human than, I would say, Greek and Roman mythology.
So it makes it a lot more relatable.
Humor. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Charles wants to know, what's Todd's prep for interviews look like? Bullet points kind of guy, or have the whole dossier written out? Same question for Nerdarchy too.
I'm a nightmare. So I don't do prep. I've been doing interviews a long time. I think about things. If I really am interviewing someone I don't know, I will read up on them for sure. But I will not make bullet points. I will not write anything out. It's always funny when like the press wants me to send them questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. Like, I never do this. I don't like doing it.
Here's a bunch of questions I'm not going to ask you.
Yeah, and that's how I did NBC as well. And a lot of my colleagues thought that was strange, but like, I absorb all this information by watching, like, whether it's video game trailers or reading D&D books. I know what I want to ask. I think about it. I sit there and think. But I think about it so much I don't need Cliff Notes, right? Not everyone works that way.
Yeah, I don't do any prep either. I mean, I may look and see what they're doing or what they're up to, but like, this format is really easygoing too, and it's kind of casual. It's just me and someone else talking about gaming and D&D, and it's only an hour long, and people ask questions in the chat. It goes by super fast.
Yeah, and there's some part of your brain that can keep track of that conversation that you're having, and if it's if it's going well, or like what the focus is.
Yeah.
And I think eventually you just kind of develop that in your brain, that it's doing the work for you subconsciously.
You do interviews. I don't do it. I don't consider these interviews. Like, I'm just
right.
talking.
Yeah, I do sit down interviews. I know what I'm going to ask, but like, I speak in a very different tone. And I do structure it, but I'm not prepping. Like, if it's Unearthed Arcana and I'm asking Jeremy Crawford about it, well, of course I read the Unearthed Arcana like 20 times. I'm trying to find a way to break it, so I'm prepared to talk about it. And even if they like tell me something I'm not ready for, I feel like I'm prepared, because I do just think about this hobby a lot, right? I think a lot of people do.
It does become consuming.
It is consuming, but in, I think, a fun way, especially when like you can exhaust all the entertainment. There's only so much Netflix really that I can watch. So yeah, I do daydream a lot about D&D and about like writing adventures and creating magical items and stuff like that. And that's one thing I need to get into. I need to start publishing stuff, and that's the thing I haven't been doing.
It's hard to do all the things.
It's hard to do all the things. That's the thing that scares me the most.
Is publishing.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I freeze up pretty bad about it. So, but this year, my goal is to publish at least one book. So,
It's the next barrier to break through. I have the utmost confidence that you'll do it with flying colors.
That's kind.
Are you playing any non-stream games?
Yeah. So I occasionally on Saturdays I play with some friends. I played what was it? The engineer, the dungeoneer? Like, it's a kobold who like builds the dungeons that everyone's been going to.
Uh,
So he's just this absurd guy who owns a shop and is a shop of kobolds, and their job is to make the dungeons for everybody. And he has a gelatinous cube farm, and it's very much this brick top from Snatch. I don't know if anyone's seen this older movie, but never trust a man with a pig farm. And I learned this growing up where I did. So you probably don't trust a man with a gelatinous cube farm either.
well, I don't know. Everything's pretty transparent.
Oh wow, solid and quick. Wow, that's impressive. That's great. Yeah, so I get to play these wacky characters. Like I played a Goblin Rune Knight. I got go to Hero Forge and make a goblin, make them as adorable as you want to, and now make them giant.
And then make them giant.
It's not pretty.
Oh,
like there's
funny.
something cute about a goblin, and then you just make them like 8 feet tall in Hero Forge,
Yeah.
and it's so upsetting. It's so weird. So I'm kind of obsessed with tall goblins. Goblins is Rune Knights, and so I play a lot of comical characters.
Yeah.
Avron's a big talker, so any character that doesn't talk as much as Avron is nice for me. Yeah.
I know you're very supportive of streamers and kind of streaming as a profession.
Yeah.
What do you think has to happen to make that more viable?
This is really hard. Because you don't know what I see a lot, and this comes down to like, especially if they're like company sponsored shows, you have to support the show. And you have to be willing to support that show for a year to 5 years. Like you really need to. Like I saw this with like a couple of shows that the views were terrible. For like 2 years I saw the show, the views were terrible. And I won't call it out. And then boom, it happened for them. Yeah, it just happened. They were starting to get 3,000 views on live streams, and starting to get 20,000 views on YouTube. And it just finally built that momentum. You can't expect to be an overnight success. It's a very hard space to be in because, obviously Critical Role exists, right? But there's a lot. Everyone is streaming now, right? And especially during the pandemic, we saw an exponential explosion of people streaming. Obviously quality matters. Like audio quality matters. A group that gets along, that has chemistry, that's funny. One of the funniest groups I was in was an all artificer game. It was my wife and a couple other people, and Lisa Penrose and I think Cynthia Marie. I'm missing the entire cast, but the chemistry of all four of those people was so funny. We were laughing the entire time, and consequently, that show did amazing. So it's hard. I think live streaming is very hard for tabletop. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears. And then you're acting, and then you're performing, and then you're showing up on time. But time.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Oh God, we were so bad. The first time I started streaming, we were like 2 hours late every time. So, but I think the cast chemistry is exceptionally key. And if you are sponsored or it's being put on by a company, you've got to back them up for a long time, and it will pay off. Like people will start watching, and more and more and more people will start watching. So
yeah, I guess the problem is too, like companies want to come in not in that first 2 years when it's struggling, but the next the next couple of years when it's doing good. And it's not totally unreasonable, because if I always look at it as a math problem, right? Like if you got 5 people in a game and you want to, and say that game is their living, right? And they were making barely above poverty wages. just to pay salaries, it'd be like 150 grand a year,
Yeah.
right? And
It's
like,
extremely expensive. You got so many cast members.
and then imagine doing that. Like if we're saying like you have to do that for 1 to 5 years to make it successful, that's a
Yeah.
huge outlay for a company. And
It
then
yeah.
so it's
No,
super
you're right.
hard. Like I appreciate the sentiment. I just don't know how we get there.
Um, I do appreciate like these little one-offs quite a bit. The charity stuff is great, but at the same time, if you're doing stuff for charity, people aren't getting paid probably.
Yeah, yeah.
But you are doing good in the world, and that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, there's no like there will not be another Critical Role, but there will be another Critical Role like thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't try to be Critical Role. Do your own thing and see what sticks, and that's just inevitable. Like something else is going to happen. Something else is going to come up. And I've seen successful shows like Mark Humes does a fantastic job. I feel like on the Evening Star, I believe on Wizards D&D right now. I think he does fantastic on that, and that's taken time to gain momentum, but it's gaining momentum. High rollers took time to get momentum. Like these things take time, and you never know when the spark is going to hit. I mean, it is a lot of work though. It's so much work. Whereas like you and I can like just talk at camera,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's all on us, right? But at least the margins were low.
The
Like,
margins are low. And and the other thing is like the thing with streams is it's a huge, you're asking for a huge investment from people.
you
We were
really are.
talking 2 to 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
And you had, and then there's a lot of streams out there, right? So how many of them could you possibly realistically consume anyway?
Yeah, and like when I like doing this, originally I bought a streaming table from South Carolina Gaming Tables, and then the pandemic happened. But originally the
Yeah.
plan was to have like my wife, myself, Lauren Urban, James Hake, and Jasmine Bueller. All of us, live in the Pacific Northwest, to all like come over and stream. Um, that wasn't going to happen. we
Yeah.
did a game called Dark Star that's on D&D Beyond, where James Hake was dungeon mastering, and that was kind of like a pilot for that. But I'm going to try to do this. We're going to do this Whittle and Rend thing, and
Yeah.
if people think my wife and I are funny, as hopefully half as funny as we think ourselves are,
Then you'll be in good shape.
that will be in good shape, and we'll actually use the streaming table, and
Yeah.
if not, I don't care. And I think that's kind of the point too, is you have to remember to just have fun,
Yeah.
and it comes off. It's kind of like an interview, right? Like if you sense that person isn't happy or don't care about something. Imagine if I didn't care about D&D right now. Holy crap, this would be a slog for you, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because sometimes one of the other guys will recommend a guest. I'll be like, "Do they D&D?" Because I'm like, what am I going to talk to them about for an hour, right? And like, they
Yeah.
might be cool and doing cool things, but from talking to people and doing interviews, if it's slow and you don't have something in common, that's a nightmare.
Well, and there is my nightmare for social interaction, right? I guess
Yeah.
maybe I interview people because I can pick and choose who I talk to.
Yeah.
Instead of like being at like parties. I hate parties so much. I hate being at a party and making small talk. It's my nightmare inside.
Well, we're kindred spirits there. I like small interactions
Yeah.
with like 1 to maybe 3 people at a time, but any more than that, yeah, I don't like it. And my wife comes from a very large family that likes to congregate, so
Oh,
most of my early like part of our relationship was just being traumatized over and over again.
I will say I have a much bigger group of friends now because of D&D, and probably
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. And I got to see a lot of them. They were in town, helping a friend move safely. It was quite the journey across the country. But seeing all of them was fantastic in person, even though you're all masked up and you're in the
Yeah.
cold and stuff like that. But the D&D community, and I've gotten to know a lot of these people. It has been amazing. It's a lot more people than I would normally be friends with, um, because I can talk to all of them, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and there is this shared history, no matter what. Like everyone comes from so many different backgrounds, but when you're coming to D&D, there is something that about that. I think that not only that social contract, but everyone's creative on a certain level. Everyone deeply cares, because I gotta tell you, if you're streaming, if you're making any D&D content, if you're trying to get in the business, you love it, because none of it's easy. None of it.
No, no. I mean, I was given advice, early on, like if you want to become a millionaire in RPGs, start with two. So
Yeah, I would never come. Yeah, that's never been. If I wanted to be a millionaire, I'd still be at Amazon or something, or yeah, or NBC, or I would have gone back. I wouldn't be a millionaire, by the way, either. uh, yeah, I would have gone into investment banking or something like that, and that board that I could never do anything like that. I'm just not. I don't function that way. This is like that. What's great about D&D is you can just be a director without budget.
yeah,
Yeah, I think D&D, and I get people, books are expensive. They were expensive when I was a little kid, but we would get books at sometimes, garage sales and stuff like that. And modules were a lot cheaper because they were like really skinny adventures. But it made it so much cheaper if you were growing up poor. You get so much entertainment value out of a tabletop book, right? And if you're a poor kid, you can probably read the monster manual like 80 to 1,000 times.
yeah. It never gets old.
It never gets old. I still do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's great about tabletop in general.
So eventually, the end times will end. If you could pick the first con to open up, what would it be?
Oh man, that's so hard. Game Hall Con's kind of fun because it's so small. Um, I really love PAX Unplugged. Uh, Jerry Holkins and all of them have always put on a good show, but PAX Unplugged is just was everyone's so nice. Um, it's tabletop everywhere you go. It's not too packed, and I've never been to Gen Con, but yeah, I do get a little nervous around massive crowds.
Then Gen Con would be an issue.
Yeah, Gen Con. Yeah, I've seen the photos of Gen
Yeah.
Con,
I
and I'm
can't
like, I
believe
don't
you've
want
never
to
been to
body
Gen Con
surf.
though.
I know. I don't want to body surf my way to the
Yeah.
level up dice booth, right, or the WizKids booth. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, PAX Unplugged is probably they're all great. Game Hall Con and PAX Unplugged are some of my favorite experiences, and Gary Con for sure. Gary Con was really great because you get to meet all these kind of D&D luminaries that these artists I had known. I met Margaret Weiss there, so that is enchanting in that way. It is in like Geneva, which is so cold,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I come from a cold place. But so Gary Con, PAX Unplugged, and Game Hall Con are lovely. Alex Kammer, does Game Hall Con. I think you and I met at that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
always in a daze at any con though. Like, and I feel
Oh
bad
yeah.
anyone who says hi to me, because I am a little overwhelmed by all the people and all the sights and sounds, because I do keep myself to myself mostly. But God, I love the booths. I like to see what people are working on. I love the panels. I kind of love all of it. So that's
I'm
kind of great.
I'm sure for you too now, kind of being a personality that's great for your anxiety, because you just have all kinds of strangers coming right at you at all times. and they know you, but you don't know them.
That's always weird. I had to get used to
Yeah.
that at NBC, because I would go to a PAX when I was like reviewing like video games all the time, and people would and these videos got like, we're on like todayshow.com and everything else, and people
Yeah.
would just, first off, don't scream someone's name, because
Oh
where I
man, that's
grew
how I
up,
figure out if it's the right person or not.
I know, but when I was a kid growing up, that meant like someone's coming for you.
Yeah.
So it took me a while. Like, I was on the streets of Seattle and some other town, and someone recognized me and they yelled my name, and I am not someone who is important enough for one's name to be yelled, first off, and that always shocks me. I'm never going to get used to it. But everyone's very lovely and nice and kind, and that's the best. That's the one thing that makes it all right, is the tabletop community is very well mannered.
Do they ask you to sign their books?
Yes, and I always tell them, like, I didn't make any of this, right?
Yeah.
Just yeah, so there's not any confusion there.
They're like, we know Matt Mercer invented D&D, but
oh, see, and Matt certainly gets the brunt of so much of that.
Yeah, it is weird though, because we get asked to sign stuff too, and it's stuff. Because you're right, like you didn't make it, but I guess it's the thing they know you for. So
what I started looking at, as especially at cons, is it's a yearbook.
Yeah.
It's a yearbook signing. It's not about I don't think it really is about celebrity as much as like, hey, I met you and I want to remember the time that we hung out at con. I think there's a yearbook kind of mentality to signing D&D books. And so if you're trying to alleviate your anxiety, that's a pretty good way. That's why I tell myself so.
Yeah, I mean, getting D&D famous has always been weird, right? Like, because especially for us, because we're just like a couple guys that talk about D&D, and it took us like a long time to use the F word, right? Like the idea of having fans it just feels so douchey.
Oh, I still don't. I don't like that. I think people are aware of me, and like, if people continue to like things I do, then that's great. I can't think about it.
Yeah.
The only person that matters is my wife. Yeah. If I think about it too much, then I already get a lot of anxiety before shows, and my anxiety disorder is like so bad, like I get massive adrenaline spikes. So is a very much a physical reaction. So I can get quite sick before a show or an appearance, and that's very hard. But I've never not done it. I've never not DM'd because of it.
Yeah.
The more I care, the harder it is on me too. So even if it's an interview, like if it's with someone I really care about, or someone I'm very excited to interview, it makes it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all get the jitters, but I can understand where like you're getting them to the next level, right? And I'm also someone who's kind of suffered some, I consider it like mild social anxiety, but like I said, like having having my wife's family be really large and congregate a lot, and then like none of them D&D, so they're gonna talk about like that sports ball or NASCAR or something. Yeah. So it's like it's even worse.
That helps, and like I'm nervous to start streaming every day on Twitch because I'm like, what am I going to say?
Yeah. What if it doesn't work?
Yeah, well, no one likes me. Yeah. But you're right. God, that family thing. Like you're watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
I want to run when I see that movie because I'm like, I do not come from a big family at all.
My wife, I don't either. Like we're small and we don't like to spend time together. But like my wife's family, her dad is the oldest of 11. And they all but one of them moved away, and like they would get together for everything. I'm like, it's Arbor Day. Why are we here?
Yeah. Gotta hang out with those trees, man.
Yeah. It's just like, and they're like all super friendly and like, which is great. Like they're good people, but when you don't like to be in crowds, and if you have any kind of social anxiety, those are like the worst kind of people. It's like sharks coming for you
because they really expect you to talk, right? Like other like families that big really expect you to be involved. But the tabletop, I think, is just kind of perfect. You've got that again. You got that social contract. People play together. They're used to that. Everyone's nice. Everyone's kind. Everyone's very giving with their time, and excited just to see each other. I think there's going to be just an outpouring of love when this is all over. It's going to be very difficult to not to hug everyone at PAX Unplugged, right? So, but like, I am very excited, and I don't think we realized what we had until we lost it. My last con was C2E2, and
I suspect within a couple years we'll go back to normal. Like it'll be completely like, who talks about the smallpox anymore, right? Like we'll move on. Hopefully we'll learn some things. I'm not super optimistic.
I love masks. I'm very big on masks. Like, notice there wasn't a lot of flu virus.
Yeah.
Like, if you're sick, don't go to a con. Things like
common sense things. It's common courtesy things.
I got hit. Was a What flu was it? It was a bug that was going around that was quite famous that mainly hit Canada, but it hit my photographer. He got it.
Yeah.
I think Adam Susser got it. More like everyone I knew got it, but me. Somehow I was immune. But like pretty much everyone at G4 got some terrible flu, and I was like worried I was patient 0 or something because.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was at a PAX a long time ago. This was like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Back in the olden days, but. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I mean, I can stay on. I don't know how long the show is.
Nah, we're wrapping up actually.
Oh, okay.
Because we were 6 after, runs about an hour, so it's about time. Final thoughts?
Thank you so much for having me on. Sorry I don't reach out or talk a lot. I like very much keep myself to myself, so I have to learn how to be a little bit more social, other than randomly putting out weird D&D dad jokes on Twitter. But
what else is Twitter for? Nothing to apologize for, and I do appreciate you coming on, and thank you. And until everyone else, until next time, stay nerdy.